Welcome back. We are in 4.3, part 2, day 2. I know, a lot of numbers, a lot of days, a lot of parts. Let's get into it. So, we are starting with the warm-up. So, this should be at the top of your lesson agenda. There we go, that's the word. At the top of the lesson agenda, please complete part A and part B. So, part A, you're writing an equation of a line that passes through a point and a slope. So that's why I gave you this form right here. That is point slope form because we're given a point and a slope. So first thing, you are just writing that equation in point slope. That's part A. Part B says rewrite that equation so that it's in slope intercept form. So that would be this form here, y equals mx plus b. Previous notes, we just talked about how to convert from point slope to slope intercept. If you need to reference your notes, go ahead and do it. If you think you remember how to do it, awesome. Go ahead and try that now. So we're completing the warm-up. So pause the video as you complete that. When you're done, go ahead and hit play, and we'll get started with the notes. All right, so you should be done with the warm-up. Real quick, here we go. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to label my points, x1, y1, and then I'm going to label my slope as m. Now it's just a matter of plugging things in. So y minus my y1 coordinate is 4 equals m is my slope of 3 times x minus my x coordinate is 1. Boom, done. All right, for the second part, I am now taking that equation, y minus 4, 3 times x minus 1, and I am now going to distribute 3 to both terms. So I got y minus 4 equals 3x minus 3. Biggest thing that people forget is to distribute the 3 to the negative 1 as well. So if it helps to put those little arcs to remind yourself visually to distribute, do that. Okay, don't forget to distribute 3 to the negative 1. Continuing on, we want to get rid of negative 4. So the inverse operation is to add 4. Those cancel. So y equals 3x, negative 3 plus 4 is positive 1. Y equals 3x plus 1. And there we go. Now that was a refresher from yesterday. We're still in 4.3, part 2. We're still writing equations. Now we're just given different information. So we want to write an equation of the line given 2 points. This is new, so there are now 3 steps that we need. Well, first thing, we need to know the slope. That's something that we've been given previously and we don't know right now. We only know 2 points. So we need to use the slope formula to calculate the slope first. Once we know the slope, then all we need to do is use that slope and a point, and we can then use point slope form. So the only thing new about today's lesson or this video lesson versus the previous one is the previous one we were given slope. Here we have to first calculate that. All right, so we found slope using the slope formula. We've plugged in the point and the slope into point slope form. And then step 3 is potentially optional. It's if needed, right? If the equation just says write in a or if the problem says just write an equation, you don't need to do this step. If it says write it in slope-intercept form, then you do need to do this step. So you got to pay attention to what the problem is asking you for. So in example 5, it just says write the equation. No specific form, just write an equation. Awesome. I love that. That makes my job easier. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to label my 2 points because now I have 2 of them. So there's x1, y1, but now there's also x2, y2. My first x and y coordinate, my second x and y coordinate. I'm going to find the slope because I need to know that for point slope form. So my slope formula, as a reminder, is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. All right, so we're just plugging stuff in. y2 is 2 minus, now I look at y1, that's 6, awesome, divided by x2 is 1, minus, now I look at x1 and I see a negative 3. I already have the minus sign there, but I also need to put -3. Careful, I get a double negative. So my very next step, actually, in the same step, I'm just going to do it all at once. 1 minus -3, I'm just going to change that to a +3 because I got a double negative there. So my next step, 2 minus 6 is -4. 1 plus 3 is +4, which reduces to -1 when we divide. Awesome. I know the slope. I know at least 1 point. Actually, I have 2. That's enough to write it in point slope form. So I'm going to start with that formula. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. All right. So y minus my y1 coordinate, well, here's the thing. I don't need to use x1 and y1. I could use x2 and y2, and I'm actually going to use those instead. Why? Because they're both positive numbers. So I'm not going to have to deal with double negatives, which can sometimes cause me problems. So I'm going to actually use that second point as my x and y coordinate. So I'm going to plug in y minus y1, or my y coordinate is really 2, equals, my slope is -1, times x minus, and my x coordinate that I'm using is +1. Because I use that second point, there are no double negatives. I don't have to simplify it all. I'm done. It's an equation. It's in point slope form. Done. So your turn number 5, 3 steps. Actually only 2, because it just says write the equation. You're going to pause the video. You're going to figure out the slope. Use that to help you write the equation of this line. Once you're done, go ahead and hit play, and we'll go over the answers together. All right, at this point, you should be done with your turn number 5. Let's go over it. First step, you should have labeled your points. If not, get in the habit of doing that. Okay, it's going to get rid of so many headaches in the future. Label your points, x1, y1, x2, y2. Second step, you should have calculated the slope. Notice this pink highlighting here. I got a double negative. x2 is negative. I'm subtracting x1, which is also negative. So I'm subtracting a negative, that becomes a positive. So my slope should be -2. And then when I plug my values into point slope form, I decided to use the second point again. So I used -1, 1. You could have used -2, 3. That's totally fine. So if you use -1, 1, you would get y minus 1 equals -2 times x plus 1. Why'd you get the +1? Well, because we had a double negative here. Now, let's say you chose the other point. If you chose the other point, let me show you what that would give you. That would have given you y minus 3 equals a slope of -2 times x minus, and x1 is -2. That double negative becomes a positive, so you should have gotten y minus 3 equals -2 x plus 2. Either way, both of those are equivalent equations. Example 5. Now we're given a table. How am I going to find information from a table? Well, I still need to find the slope, and then I'm going to use that information and a point to put it in point slope form. But where are my points? Well, this table provides ordered pairs. This is really -6, -3. So I could rewrite that as an ordered pair, -6, -3. That's really what this table is representing. And -3, -1 is that second row. So these are just ordered pairs, but in table form. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick 2 easy points to work with. So 0, 1, that's really easy. 0 and 1, friendly numbers to use. So that's my x1 and my y1 coordinate. Then my second x and y coordinate, I'm going to use the point 3, 3. So I've labeled those x1, y1, x2, y2. Then I'm going to use my slope formula up here. y2 minus y1 equals x2 minus x1. Plug my values in, and I should get a slope of 2/3. Subtract your y's, subtract your x's, and divide. Then from there, I'm going to pick one point. Let's see, what point did I pick? I picked the point 0, 1, this point here. That's the ordered pair that I decided to go with. So my y coordinate was 1, my x coordinate was 0, which if we subtract 0, it's really just 2/3 times x. Now, if we want to write this in slope-intercept form, there's really only one more step. We need to get rid of minus y on the left side. So I'm going to add 1, need to get rid of -1, so we're going to add 1 on both sides, leaving us with y equals 2/3 x plus 1. Your turn, number 6. You're going to follow the same process. Now, to make yours consistent with mine, I'm going to label those for you a while. So I chose 1, 1 as my first x and y coordinate, and then I chose -2, 6 as my second x and y coordinate. It really doesn't matter which one's first and which one's second. I also decided to, when I wrote my equation, go with 1, 1. All right, but that's up to you. You should still get the same equation in slope-intercept form. So pause the video as you complete this problem. You're finding the slope and then plugging the slope and a point into point-slope form. Go ahead and get started on that. All right, you should be done with your turn, number 6. Let's go over it. So y2 minus y1, that's 6 minus 1. Ooh. There we go. And then y2, or x2 minus x1, that should be -2 minus 1. So that's 5 over -3, which is -5/3 for the slope. Now for the equation, y minus y1, I chose 1, 1. So y minus y1, our slope, x minus x1. Now, if you chose a different point, it doesn't matter because they're really equivalent equations. If I take this a little bit further, I know it just says write the equation, but I'm going to put it in slope-intercept form. All I have to do is 2 steps. Distribute the slope, y minus 1 equals -5/3 x, and negative times a negative is a positive 5/3. Then I'm going to add 1 to both sides. That gives me y equals -5/3 x plus, and that is 8/3. You would get that equation no matter what 2 points, no matter what 2 ordered pairs you picked from this table. Doesn't matter. That brings us to self-quiz number 2. So this was a rather short one. So write the equation of the line that passes through the points 3, 2, and 6, -7. So there are 2 parts to this. Part 1, or part A, I want you to write it in point-slope form. So you're going to have it in this form here. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Then you're going to take that form, and as we've been practicing, convert this guy into slope-intercept form. Remember, there are 2 steps to do that. So I want you to then just practice converting point slope into slope-intercept. That's what you should get for part B. So part A should look like this. Part B should look like this. Once you are done with that self-quiz, you can go ahead and get started on the practice for day number 2 on the front of the agenda.